There are moments in life that cut deeper than any blade. Moments when the ones you trusted most betray you in ways you never imagined. They don't just walk away, they tear through your soul like a storm, leaving ruin in its wake. You are left standing amidst the rubble of a life you built with your heart, your time, your prayers, and now all that remains are the echoes of what once was. You gave your love freely, your loyalty without question, your sacrifices without seeking applause. But in return, they gave you silence, absence, and abandonment. They left you with nothing, no explanation, no remorse, no closure. And in the quiet that followed their exit, you questioned everything. Your worth, your purpose, your future. You asked, why would God allow this? Why would He let me be reduced to nothing by people who never deserved my goodness to begin with? But what you didn't know in those moments of silent suffering is that God was watching. Not passively, but with great intention. He saw the depth of the wound. He felt the weight you carried when you were left holding the broken pieces of dreams shattered by someone else's choices. And while they thought they had finished you, God was just getting started. Because God does not build on pride, He builds on humility. He does not anoint the already comfortable. He anoints the crushed, the misunderstood, the rejected, the left behind. You see, what they took from you wasn't the end of your story. It was the beginning of God's restoration. You thought they drained you dry, but they only cleared the space for God to fill. What they meant to break you, God will use to bless you. What they meant for evil, God has already repurposed for good. There is something sacred about being emptied. It's painful, yes, but it also makes room. Room for truth, room for clarity, room for God to pour into you what He always intended you to carry. When they left, they made the mistake of thinking they were taking your value with them. But value does not walk out with people. It is embedded in your spirit by the one who made you, and that one is still here. God is not in the business of leaving you halfway through the storm. He specializes in showing up when others walk out. And when God restores, He does not return what was lost in equal measure. He multiplies. He heals the wounds so deeply that you begin to thank Him for the people who caused them. That is the beauty of divine restoration. It does not merely return, it rewrites. The nights you cried, feeling the sting of betrayal like salt in an open wound, He saw them. The mornings you woke up heavy with hopelessness, struggling to even pray, He heard those silent cries. And every tear, every ache, every unanswered question was collected, counted, and cherished, not forgotten, because nothing escapes the attention of a God who watches over you like a father guarding his most beloved child. So yes, they hurt you. They left you with nothing. But that nothing was the canvas God was waiting for. Now He paints with purpose. He is preparing to give you more than they took, more than you asked, more than you believed you deserved. He will give you peace that makes no sense, strength that shocks even you, and a joy that isn't tied to any person who left. You won't need revenge. You won't need an apology, because what God gives next will be louder than any lie they told, and stronger than any damage they left behind. And here is the divine irony. Those who thought they were discarding you will have to watch God decorate your life with blessings they can't explain. They'll see the glow return to your face, the fire in your steps, the abundance in your heart, and they'll wonder how you rose. They'll wonder how someone they tried to bury became unshakable. And in that wondering, they will realize it wasn't luck, it wasn't chance, it was God. You are not abandoned, you are positioned. You are not forgotten, you are being refined. You are not empty, you are being prepared for overflow. The silence of this season is not God's absence, it's his strategy. He's setting the stage, and when he moves, it will be unmistakable. Your enemies will not just see your comeback, they will see God in it. So hold on, not to what they did, not to what they took, but to the promise that God restores, renews, and rewards those who remain faithful through the fire. You survived what was meant to destroy you. That alone is evidence that what's coming is far greater than what was lost. There is a holy mystery in how God works through subtraction. To the world, losing everything is a tragedy, but to the spirit that trusts in God, loss is often the very language he speaks before multiplication. They thought they stripped you bare, but they only stripped away what couldn't go with you to the next level. They thought they dismantled your life, but they were unknowingly clearing the ground for God to build something eternal. What felt like devastation was actually excavation, and now the foundation is exposed. God is laying the stone. Do you remember those quiet moments when you sat in your room, questioning your worth, wondering if anyone truly saw you? God did. And not only did he see, he stayed. He didn't flinch when you were broken. He didn't retreat when your prayers grew silent. In fact, that is where he draws nearest, not to the loud, not to the celebrated, not to the honored, but to the crushed in spirit. His nearness is not a vague comfort. It is the very breath that keeps you alive when your willpower has run out. The people who walked away did not leave you in ruins. They left you in the hands of your Maker, and there is no safer place to be. There, in that stillness, God began his restoration, not by fixing the outside, but by strengthening the inside. He gave you vision where there was only confusion. He gave you calm where chaos reigned. He taught you to recognize the false and value the genuine. He whispered into your soul, "I will give you double for your trouble, beauty for ashes, and joy where there was only mourning." They thought they took everything, but they couldn't take your destiny. They couldn't touch your purpose. That's not something held by people. It's guarded by God. They might have damaged your name, but they couldn't touch your identity. For what God has declared over your life cannot be undone by the failures or betrayals of others. Your destiny was never placed in their hands. It was always in His. There is a divine rhythm to restoration. It is not always loud. It does not always begin with fireworks or fanfare. Sometimes it begins in a whisper, a moment of peace you can't explain, a burst of strength that surprises you, a sudden clarity that pierces through confusion. And then, slowly but surely, He rebuilds, not just your life, but your belief, your capacity to love again, your trust in your own worth. And this time, what He builds cannot be taken, because it was not built on borrowed approval or temporary affection. It was built on truth. Let them have their opinions. Let them rewrite your story from a distance. Let them think they've won, because what they don't realize is that they weren't the authors of your life to begin with. God writes your story, and He's not finished. The chapters ahead are filled with redemption, with divine recompense, with victories so undeniable that even those who doubted you will be silenced. One day soon you will look back at this painful season and you won't feel bitterness. You'll feel awe. You'll see how everything had to fall apart so the truth could rise. You'll see that if they hadn't left, you wouldn't have found your true source. If they hadn't hurt you, you wouldn't have learned how to heal. If they hadn't counted you out, you wouldn't have discovered who was truly standing with you all along. This is not a story of revenge. It is a story of resurrection. Not of getting even, but of getting elevated. They left you with nothing. God is about to give you more than they ever could, and not just in material ways, but in the richness of soul, in the wisdom forged through fire, in the peace that comes from walking through pain and realizing you still have your spirit intact. Do not fear the days ahead. Do not dread the future. God is not done proving that He is still the God who restores, the God who lifts the lowly, the God who writes better endings than anything your enemies could imagine. So keep walking, keep trusting, keep breathing. The pain was real, but so is the promise. And what's coming will prove that your loss was never a loss in God's eyes. It was a setup for something great. It is one of the deepest miracles of faith, that in the bleakest seasons we are not forgotten, but favored. You may not feel like it now. You may feel discarded, left behind, like life passed you over while others danced in their comfort and prosperity. You may feel like you're living in a shadow, surrounded by the echoes of what could have been. But what the world calls delay, God calls preparation. What they called your end, God calls your turning point. There is something powerful, even sacred, about being in the wilderness. That space between what was and what will be. It is lonely, yes, but it is also holy. It is where illusions are stripped, where idols are exposed, and where you learn to hear God's voice, unclouded by noise. You see, they hurt you, not because you were weak, but because you carried something they couldn't understand. Light, truth, integrity. You carried love in a world obsessed with power. You offered loyalty in a world that trades it for convenience. And for that, you became a target. But those wounds, they are not your shame. They are your testimony. Each one is proof that, even when others turned on you, you did not betray yourself. You stayed true. You stayed kind. You stayed hopeful, even when you had every reason not to. And heaven took note. Heaven always takes note. In this world, we are often judged by appearances, what we have, what we've lost, what we can show. But God judges differently. He sees what remains after the storm. He sees the quiet courage, the broken heart that still prays, the soul that still believes even with trembling hands. And when God sees that, He does not overlook it. He responds, not in haste but with holiness, not with temporary fixes, but with eternal blessings. Do not be deceived by the silence of your current season. It is not neglect, it is nurturing. God is growing something in you that requires time, solitude, and separation. Just as a tree's roots grow deepest when unseen, your soul is being anchored in places that only He can see, so that when the blessings come, and they will, you will not be shaken. Because what is built with God's hands cannot be torn down by man. Think not only of what they took from you, but of what they could never touch. They could not touch your anointing. They could not cancel your calling. They could not rewrite what God Himself has offered. You are not a victim of their leaving. You are a vessel for God's lifting. And the very things they tried to bury will become the very things God uses to bless you. There will come a day when the pain you feel now becomes your fuel. When you will wake up with peace, not because your life is perfect, but because you finally see the purpose behind your scars. They may have left you with nothing tangible, but what God is about to give you cannot be measured in hands. It's favor, it's restoration, it's recompense, it's joy that doesn't ask for permission, and peace that doesn't make sense. And you will not have to strive for it. You will not have to chase it. You will not have to beg for what is already written in your story. Because when God moves, He moves with clarity. And the doors He opens cannot be shut by anyone who ever tried to close them. So walk forward, not as one who has lost everything, but as one whom God is about to reward in full. Let your tears become your oil. Let your heartbreak become your altar, because you are on the edge of something divine. What they thought would break you will soon be the very thing God uses to crown you. They took much, but they did not take your destiny. And what God is about to do in your life will leave no doubt. He is the God who gives more than what was taken. There is a strange beauty in being emptied. It doesn't feel beautiful when it's happening. It feels like the end of everything you knew, like a house collapsing with you still inside. But as you emerge from that dust, bruised but breathing, you begin to see what cannot be seen when life is full of noise and pride and clutter. You begin to notice the subtle, sacred shift in the air. God is near. They hurt you and thought they silenced your voice, but what they didn't know is that your silence became your sanctuary. It became the place where your soul started speaking with heaven. They thought you'd stay broken forever, stuck in the ruins they left behind. But brokenness in God's hands is not the end. It is the beginning of a deeper creation, a truer form, a more powerful you. Do you understand now? The pain was not pointless. It was not random. It was not a mistake. They had to leave, not because you were unworthy, but because what God is about to do in your life could not be done in their presence. He is removing all that hindered the flow of His blessing, all that clouded your clarity, all that stood between you and your inheritance. And sometimes the only way to clear the path is for Him to allow you to walk through the fire. So what is fake burns away, and what is real remains. There is nothing as precious to God as a soul that still loves despite betrayal, still gives despite being taken from, still hopes despite disappointment. You see, you became that soul, and that is why heaven is about to respond with a restoration so great, even you will struggle to believe it at first. Don't you know by now? God is not limited by what they took. He is not intimidated by the emptiness they left behind. In fact, He chooses it, because only in the empty vessel can the oil be poured. Only in the broken heart can true intimacy be born. Only in the silence of your room, when no one else noticed your tears, could He teach you that you were never alone, not for a second. And now, after all the weeping, after all the praying with cracked voices and trembling faith, God is about to lift you, not just spiritually, but visibly. He will not merely heal your heart, He will honor it. Those who once spoke of your failure will be stunned by your favor. They'll say, "How did they rise from that? How did they smile again? How did they find joy after all they lost?" And the answer will not be found in explanations. It will not be something you can calculate or defend. Because what's coming is not from your striving, it's from His sovereign hand. And when God restores, He doesn't return things to how they were. He makes them new, better, stronger, so much so that you will no longer want what you lost. You will thank Him for the no's, for the people who walked away, because without their leaving, you never would have seen what He was preparing in their absence. And He is not finished. What you thought was your lowest point was merely the lifting point. The very pit they threw you in will become the platform He raises you from. And when He raises you, it won't be with bitterness in your heart. It won't be with revenge on your mind. It will be with a quiet, holy strength. One that says, "I was hurt, but I am healed. I was left, but I am not alone. I lost much, but my God has given me more." So rise, not in arrogance, but in assurance, not with fear, but with faith. God is about to do what no one saw coming, and it will be unmistakable. You will not have to explain. You will not have to justify. You will simply live, and in your living, in your rising, In your overflowing abundance, they will see the same God who watched you suffer stayed to see you soar. The world may never understand the alchemy of heaven, the way God transforms ashes into crowns, pain into power, heartbreak into holiness. They think you've recovered because time passed, but you and God know better. It wasn't time that healed you, it was divine intention. It was grace wrapped in stillness, mercy disguised as delay. And yes, even the silence you cursed became the soil where your future took root. There was a time you begged God for answers but received none. A time you asked why they did what they did, why they walked away, why they betrayed you. But now you're beginning to understand. Sometimes God doesn't explain because He's protecting something deeper than understanding. He's protecting your peace, your purpose, your purity of heart. The less you know about their motives, the more you learn about God's. They hurt you and left you with nothing, yet somehow here you are, still standing, still breathing, still believing even if quietly. That alone is a miracle, because what they tried to destroy was not just your life, it was your identity. They hoped the void they created would swallow you whole, but it didn't. In fact, in that void, God placed something they never expected: divine resilience. You've been transformed, not just on the outside, but from within. Your vision has changed. Your values have shifted. You've stopped chasing those who wouldn't even walk beside you. You've stopped begging for crumbs from tables God never asked you to sit at. You've come to realize that what they took was never really yours to begin with. It was a chapter, not the story. And now you are approaching the chapters where God writes in bold, where the ink of heaven spills across every page of your life with breakthroughs, blessings, and restoration. But this restoration, it isn't merely a return of what was lost. It's an unveiling of what was hidden. The strength, the anointing, the favor that was buried beneath layers of pleasing others, holding on too long and ignoring the warnings. God is about to reward you for every silent battle, for every night you said nothing while your heart was breaking, for every moment you chose not to retaliate, even when the pain begged for revenge. That's what they didn't see. They saw your silence and mistook it for weakness, but God saw it and called it sacred. Heaven remembers the self-restore you showed, the tears you wiped in solitude, the faith you clung to when nothing made sense. And now, He is moving. Not because you demanded it, but because He promised it. Not because you are perfect, but because you are His. The kind of restoration coming will not be something you can earn. It will be a gift, a declaration, a divine announcement. This one is mine, and I repay what was stolen. What you thought would crush you is becoming the cornerstone. What you thought would bury you is becoming the blessing. You've outgrown what tried to contain you. And now God is preparing a life so full, so vivid, so anointed, that you'll look back on what they took and say, it wasn't a loss, it was liberation. And the beauty of it all? You won't even wish them harm. You'll bless them, not because they deserve it, but because you've been lifted to a place where their opinion, their actions, their memory no longer hold the power to define you. You've seen too much of God's goodness to dwell on the damage they caused. The tables are turning, but not in the way they expect, not with vengeance, but with vindication, not with loud retaliation, but with quiet elevation. And as God pours into your life peace, favor, opportunity, connection, you'll realize that the nothing you were left with has become the sacred space where everything holy now lives. What they took is nothing compared to what God is about to give. You were emptied to be filled. You were broken to be made whole. You were abandoned to be adopted. By grace, by love, by destiny. And no one can undo what God is about to do next. It is not until you've been emptied by betrayal that you come to know the fullness of divine companionship. When the last door shuts, when the last person leaves, when even your own voice feels too weak to call for help, that is when eternity leans in. That is when God, not with fanfare, but with a stillness more powerful than thunder, reminds you, I am here. They hurt you and didn't even flinch. They walked away as if your heart was a disposable thing. But what they didn't realize, what they couldn't see, is that they left you to the one who always finishes what he starts. The one who does not discard the broken but treasures it, not because he delights in our pain, but because he knows what lies beyond it. Because he knows that pain becomes the very soil where destiny is grown. You see, they thought they took your future when they left. They thought they stripped you of your confidence, your ability to rise again. But what they forgot is that your future isn't tied to them. It never was. Your future is held in the hands of the one who sees every injustice, every secret hurt, every long night where you lay in silence and thought you were forgotten. But you were never forgotten. You were hidden. Hidden so God could heal you, hidden so he could rewire your faith, hidden so he could take your crushed spirit and transform it into holy strength. That is what he does. He is not absent in your pain. He is present in it. He uses the very things that try to destroy you to become the foundation of your comeback. Not a comeback to who you were, but a rising into who you were always meant to be. And isn't that what they missed? They saw the outer version of you, the one still learning, still forgiving, still trusting people who didn't deserve your heart. But God saw the fire that would one day emerge from those ashes. He saw the strength that betrayal would birth, the kind of strength that doesn't announce itself with noise, but with clarity, with peace. You are not who you used to be. That old version, the one who tolerated too much, who overgave, who thought love meant enduring silent harm, that version had to die for this one to live. And now that it has, you are dangerous, not to others, but to darkness. You walk differently because you no longer depend on others for your worth. You speak differently because you know truth does not need validation. And you dream differently because you now understand that your vision cannot be limited by people who lack the capacity to see it. God is raising you not just to survive, but to shine. And when he raises you, he does it in a way that no man, no memory, no mistake can reverse. He prepares a table in the presence of those who once questioned your value, not to humiliate them, but to honor you. Because when God restores, he does not hide it, he displays it, not to breed arrogance, but to prove a point, that no weapon formed against you prospered, that every lie, every wound, every silence, they were all part of the plan to take you higher. So now, you walk with a holy confidence, not the kind that seeks revenge, but the kind that exudes quiet victory. You don't need to explain why you made it. You don't need to defend your healing. You are the evidence. You are the story. And soon, those who thought they erase you will watch as God rewrites your life into something they cannot ignore. This time, you will not be the one left behind. This time, you will not be the one begging for love, for attention, for respect. Because now you know where your value comes from. And it does not come from those who left. It comes from the God who stayed. The people who hurt you believed they had the final word. They walked away assuming you would crumble under the weight of their absence, as if their presence had been the oxygen you needed to survive. But you've learned something far more powerful than survival. You've discovered restoration. Not the kind the world offers, cheap and temporary, but the kind that heaven writes into the marrow of your soul. You've walked through the valley of abandonment. You've stood still in moments so quiet you wondered if God had turned his face from you. But now you see, those were not wasted hours. They were sacred hours. Hours where the divine peeled back everything false and left only what was eternal. And though the loss nearly broke you, it also blessed you, because it forced you to meet yourself, to see your worth through the eyes of the one who formed you, not the ones who failed you. You are no longer the same. The days of bending just to be loved are over. The era of proving yourself to people who could never recognize your value has ended. You've walked through the fire, and it has not consumed you. In fact, it has refined you. You are not the wound they left. You are not the void they created. You are the miracle they didn't expect. And now comes the part that only God could orchestrate. The rise. Not a public spectacle, but a spiritual shift, a divine unfolding. The heavens are opening in your favor, not because you earned it, but because you endured, because you held on when everything around you said to let go, because you refused to become what they were, even when becoming like them seemed easier than staying pure. God has been watching, not just the moments of pain, but the moments of restraint. The times you held your tongue, the nights you resisted hatred, the days you carried invisible weights with no one clapping for your strength. Heaven does not forget what the world ignores, and now God is about to honor what was hidden. This is the season where the scales begin to tip, where the cries you whispered in the dark become the catalyst for blessings seen in the light. The relationships that ended are now the spaces into which divine connections will enter. The opportunities that slipped away will be replaced with those you could never have imagined, not because you chased them, but because you were faithful when it made no sense to be. And here is the most humbling truth. What they meant for harm has turned into your harvest. What they did to break you is the very thing God used to build you. The tears they caused watered seeds of resilience that have now taken root so deeply no storm can ever uproot you again. You no longer wait for their apology. You no longer need their closure, because what God is doing in your life now is louder than anything they could say. He is about to give you joy that makes no sense, doors that no man can shut, and peace that doesn't require a perfect past to deserve it. They left you with nothing, but God is about to give you the kind of more that redefines what fullness means. Not just things, but wisdom. Not just success, but purpose. Not just attention, but destiny. And the best part? You'll carry it all without bitterness, without the need to prove, without the weight of revenge. Because healed people don't perform, they radiate. You are becoming radiant now, quietly, steadily, divinely, and those who overlooked you will have no choice but to notice. Not your revenge, but your rise. Not your anger, but your anointing. And in that rise, God will be glorified. So step forward, not with hesitation, but with holy certainty. You're not returning to what was, you're walking into what's always been yours. This is not a repair, it's a resurrection. There is a profound peace that follows a long war within the soul. A holy stillness that arrives not because the pain was never real, but because, at last, the pain has fulfilled its purpose. And that purpose was never to destroy you, It was to shape you, to strip away what was built on shaky ground and establish something eternal. They hurt you and thought it was the end of you. They thought the silence they left behind would echo forever. But instead of echoing with despair, that silence has become a sacred chamber, one where God speaks, and what He has whispered into the depths of your soul is changing everything. Now you see, what they removed, God replaced with Himself. When they walked away, they created space for divinity to walk in. When they said you were not enough, God said, I am. And that truth has sustained you through storms they never had to face. While they celebrated their departure, you quietly built your resurrection. You learned how to breathe again, how to trust the process, how to stand when nothing was holding you but invisible faith. And that invisible faith is what has made you immovable now. No longer do you bend to be chosen. No longer do you shrink to be accepted. You have tasted what it feels like to lose everything and still find peace. And that kind of peace cannot be threatened by anything man can do. The miracle is not just that you survived what they did. The miracle is that you did not become like them. You did not let their betrayal define your belief. You did not let their silence shut down your song. You rose from the ruins with more grace than you had before you were broken. And that is a victory they'll never be able to explain. Now the time has come. God is unveiling what He's been building in the dark. The restoration won't just be spiritual. It will be visible, not for your glory, but for His. So that when people see you thriving, smiling, glowing in ways that defy logic, they'll ask, what happened to them? And the answer will not be revenge. The answer will not be rage. The answer will be God. He took the nothing they left you with and built a life of meaning. He took your tears and turned them into power. He took your heartbreak and made it your compass. And now, what you carry is not just healing. It is purpose forged in pain, clarity born from chaos, light rising from your lowest night. They thought they took from you, but what they really did was position you. They moved out of the way so that heaven could move in. They cleared the room, thinking they left you empty, but it was God who stepped through the door next. And what He gives will not be shallow, it will not be fleeting, it will not be a bandage over a deep wound. No, what He gives will restore every year the enemy thought he stole. It will silence every lie that was spoken over your name. It will elevate you not just in the eyes of man, but in the depth of your own soul, where you finally understand that you were never forsaken. You were chosen. You'll no longer pray for their return. You'll no longer seek their validation. You'll no longer wonder what was wrong with you, because you will know there was never anything wrong with you. There was only something right with you that they could not comprehend. And it was that very light in you that God refused to let be dimmed by their departure. This is your season of divine reversal, where the first shall be last and the last shall be first, where the rejected become rulers, where the left behind become the lifted, where the stories written in tears become testimonies shouted in triumph. So, walk forward, head high, heart whole. Don't look back. Don't water what God has uprooted. Don't chase what He allowed to collapse. You've been hurt. You've been left. But now you are about to be crowned by the one who never left your side. They hurt you and left you with nothing, but God is about to give you more than they ever could have, and more than you even dreamed. And when it happens, you won't have to say a word. Your healed life will speak volumes. Your peace will preach louder than pain ever could. The chapter they tried to end is the one God is now using to begin your legacy. Watch what He does next.